Hi, my name is Rick Forpahl, and I'm a chef instructor at a local community college, and I'm going to show you a little bit about cake decorating today and some of the equipment and tools needed, as well as the supplies and the techniques required to prepare or present a festive-looking cake for a number of different occasions. Now we're going to do a little practice work on the back of this sheet pan here. I've already inserted half of the coupler, and I'm going to use this star tip with this ring around the outside to secure it to the bag. The thing that's nice about the couplers are that you can exchange the tips without having to empty out the bag. When you fill the icing bag, it's important that you keep it off of your hands as best as possible, and to make a little cuff on the outside of the bag, and then just take the icing and put it in the bag and close your hand around it, and that keeps it in there. Another thing that's important is not to overfill the bag. Half, 2/3 of the way is adequate amount. And once you get it filled, then just take on the outside of the bag, just push down and then twist it, and then expel a little bit of the icing out, or squeeze it out in case there's any air pockets in the bag. I'll show you how to make stars right now. When you work with this icing, you do or work with a pastry bag. Normally there's two positions that you have the bag in. One is either at a 45 or at a 90. This is a star, and this is done at a 90-degree angle. You just squeeze, stop, and pull up. And that's the star. Then we'll do a rosette, which is just similar to a star, but you make a little twist around in a circle, like that. And that's a rosette. It's also important to keep the end of the tip clean because it does form, or the decoration does form a little bit on the outside of the tube. If it's messed up, it messes up your decoration. This is done at a 45-degree angle. Just build it up, let it curl, squeeze, and then stop and pull down. Again, I'm at about a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch off of the surface as it builds up, and then it just pulls down. Now we're going to change tips. I've removed the star tip, and I'll put the flower tip or rose tip in the bag. And again, you just twist that on, make sure it's on there securely. Wrap up the top, and then squeeze a little bit out to make sure that there aren't any air pockets in there again. The sweet pea is just a simple little flower that you can add to a lot of different cakes or different applications. It's 3 steps. Just first one goes out in the center, then one off to one side, one off to the other, and you get this little flower. Same over here. Just a slight turn, and that's a little sweet pea. And then what we can do later is come back with a leaf tip or a plain tip in a different colored icing, and make the stem and that calyx portion that surrounds the base of the flower. The next one is a rose done on a rose nail, and this is just a little cone that you make in the center of the rose nail. And generally you want to make it 1.5 times the height of the tip that you're working with. So obviously if you're making a huge rose, you'd have a much taller cone. And conversely, if you have a small one, just a smaller cone. This should be at about 11 o'clock, the angle pointing towards the center. Then the next petal, do 3 petals at 12 o'clock, meaning that they stand straight up. And when you work with the rose nail, the pastry bag, or this hand's coming this direction, and the nail is turning out that direction. So there's 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a few down here on the bottom. And you get it. And there's a rose. Once you've completed the rose, then just grab a pair of scissors and slide them underneath, having them open slightly, and then you can use the end of the nail to sort of push it off, close the scissors, and you transfer it to the cake, doing it that. There is another technique for making a rose that's a little quicker and perhaps doesn't take as much time, but it is an alternate method. And that one, you pipe out the little cone in the center and then hold the bag at an angle here and make these little loop sorts of motion. It's sort of like a little half circle, and it comes around like that. And it's perhaps not as exact looking, but it goes a heck of a lot quicker than stopping in between each petal. And again, to just transfer that, use the scissors and the nail. Now we're going to change tips again and do some stems and a little writing, stems for the flowers, and then we'll finish up with some leaves. So again, you just loosen the coupler, put in the plain or the straight tip, screw that back on, and then again, squeeze out a little bit of icing to make sure that there aren't any air pockets in there. So I'll just do a little, some stems for flowers or a little bouquet. This you start at about 1/8 of an inch or so off of the surface, make sure it sticks, and then slowly pull it down. I'm staying off of the surface again, as I said, but not too far. And sometimes the icing breaks. And if that does happen, that's where we'll put a flower or a little stem. And I'll put another stem over here or a leaf and have it come down this way. Take this tip off and put the leaf tip back on, and I'll put some sweet peas on here. And then we'll finish up with a few leaves. So the sweet peas just go at the end here. So. So. And then I can come back again with the plain tip. See why it's convenient to have these couplers. You can switch this out pretty quickly. And then I'll put that little calyx portion that I mentioned earlier on the bottom of the leaf. I'm doing this all in white icing. Normally you'll do some colors, and we'll get to decorating the real cake. I'll have different colors so that you'll see that there's a difference in the final product. And that can come off. And I'll put the leaf tip on and put a few leaves in here. And a leaf, I'll just do one over here on the side. You just squeeze that out and it builds up, and then you just pull back a little bit so that it comes to a point. A few up here and a couple there. And now we're going to do a little writing or printing. You can write happy birthday, best wishes, happy anniversary, whatever sort of information you want to convey on the cake. I'll start out just writing. One thing to note is that it's done with your arm and your shoulder. It's not done with your hand and fingers like you would if you were writing with a pen or a pencil. And I'll just do, I don't know, happy birthday, how's that? And I'll just start here, squeeze, stop, and pull down, and that will be the first part of the H. As far as the particular style of writing that you choose, or printing, it's entirely up to you. There's happy. Again, squeeze, stop. And you can put some little flourishes on the ends there. Sort of gives a little visual interest. And there's happy birthday. Now we're going to apply the icing to the cake. These have been baked earlier today, and it's really important that the cake be cool before you apply icing. Actually, if you can bake them a day ahead of time, that's even not such a bad plan. You don't want them frozen when you apply the icing, because then it sticks too firmly, but you certainly don't want them too warm because the icing will then fall off. Whenever you do decorate a cake, always try and ensure that it has a flat surface. So in order to do that, the bottom of the cake as it comes out of the pan then becomes the top. Same on this particular layer. This cake is going to be used for birthday cake, and it has this little confetti sort of decorations in the center of it, but I'll put some of those on the outside. So make sure that it's flat. We could split these layers and have like a 4-layer cake or do a 2-layer cake. I think what I'll do, just for demonstration purposes here, is I'll just split this and do the 4-layer variety. As you cut the cake, it's important to turn it as you go through. You can't really just start on one side and slice all the way through. And then with this plastic plate or foam plate, I'll just transfer that over like so. And I'll do the same with this one, split that. And again, it's just a spinning sort of motion. Now, the icing, when you apply this, you don't need a whole lot of it on here, but certainly enough to provide a little flavor. And you don't want to be picking up the cake. I could do this, or picking up the spatula in between, because that'll pull up cake crumbs. Actually, this one's not doing it. But a lot of times that's what happens, is you end up with cake crumbs all over the surface of the cake. And that's not what you're looking for. So you just apply a layer of icing in here like so. And I'll slide this layer on. You can put other fillings in there, fruit jam, lemon curd, things like that are certainly an acceptable alternative. Fruit, sometimes even layered in here with the icing. Some sliced strawberries or something like that. You don't need to have this super thick, just an even layer around the layer of icing around the cake. And I'll put this can be our top layer. And just applying a little pressure on here. If you have another plate, you can set that on top. You don't want to break it, but you want to make sure that it's nice and level and that you have 90-degree angles. These particular foam discs that I'm using here provides a pattern or a line that you can follow along the edge and keep everything at a 90-degree angle. I usually do the sides. Some folks put the icing right on the top and then spread it over the edges. I just find that this works a little better for me, and it helps ensure that you have a 90-degree corner on the top and a little sharper looking, because we'll drag that icing across later on. So spin this around, and it's pretty smooth. The purpose of icing too, by the way, is it adds flavor, or some of the purposes. It adds flavor, but it also works as a preservative in that it keeps the cake fresh and moist, because it seals out the air that might be in there. And then I can just set it on the table and put the icing now on the top. And again, don't pick up the spatula off of the surface of the cake, because sometimes you'll end up with a bunch of cake crumbs. Notice that I'm applying a considerable amount of icing. It's far more than we'll finish with, but it works well as sort of the cement to hold the cake together, and then we can come across and take the excess back off so that you don't end up with too much icing and not enough cake. Sort of spin this around a little bit. And do the edges here. And there we have it. That's just a very basic iced cake. Now that we put the icing on the cake, we can start to decorate it. I put it on a turntable. This is sort of an optional piece of equipment, but it does make things a little easier. It just sort of spins around. And I mentioned this cake comb earlier on, and this is how you use a cake comb. You can start on the very far side and then just twist all the way around. Try not to stop. And it puts this little pattern in there. You can do it on the top as well if you wanted to do that sort of thing. And the thing that's kind of nice about using a cake comb is it covers up any imperfections in your icing that you might have, because it looks like it's intentional. Now I'm going to put a few stems on this cake. I've got the green icing in here in the canvas bag. You can use either paper or canvas, but I chose to use the canvas here. It works a little better, and just squeeze and let the icing come down. And when you do stem and writing, it's good to have the icing fairly soft. It stretches a little bit, and if you need to thin it out, sometimes you can use a little water, but more appropriately, you might want to use corn syrup, because that makes it stretch a little bit. So that's the foundation for the flowers, and I'll put some sweet peas and some roses on here. And then I'll just write happy birthday in green. It's important that you make sure that you don't run out of space when you're decorating the cake, that you get too far to the edge. This one's pretty close, but it'll still work. Now I'll put a rose where all of the stems meet. I'm building up that center cone. And again, the first part is at about 11 o'clock, and then I'll do 3 petals and 5 petals. And for this, I think that's probably big enough. Doesn't necessarily need the other. And I'll take it off with the scissors and just place it right there. Then we'll come back and put a few sweet peas on here, and then finish with a few leaves. And the sweet pea just out like so. Some people call these rosebuds, and they're actually not, but they look pretty close. And that's rose flowers. And I'll finish with the put the little calyx portion on there, and that's just a little green, cover up the base of the flower. We'll put some leaves on, and I'll change this tip out and go to the leaf tip. And finish up with a few leaves. I'll put those around this flower here, so it gives it a little base, so it looks like the calyx from the rose. Okay, now I'm going to put a shell border around the top of the cake, and again, that's done with the star tip at a 45-degree angle, and I'm using the paper cone, and it's just squeeze, stop, pull away. And there's the top border. And I can transfer this now to a decorative plate. And I'll just stick this spatula beneath, hold it, and get it centered. And there you have it. This is another cake. This is a 3-layer carrot cake, and I'm going to, with cream cheese icing, and I'm going to do a little different decoration or garnish on the side. Since it's 3 layers, there was 1 extra layer left over, and I crumbled that and added a few walnuts to it, and we're going to use that to coat the side of the cake. And I'll just pick this up and set it over the pan here, and then just add this, or apply this. It's important that the icing be freshly applied, so it's kind of sticky when you apply these crumbs. And there's that part of it. And now I'll just put it on the turntable right here and decorate it with a few rosettes and a few carrots. I've got another pastry bag here. This is a plastic bag that's specifically designed for cake decorating that works pretty well. These are disposable again, and these are the types of bags that are most often used in commercial bake shops these days. And just fold over the end. For this, I'll do it similar to a torte, and that I'll mark the portions with the rosettes, and we should be able to get, I don't know, 12 or 16 portions out of this. So now you can see where the portions are. Now I'm going to put a few carrots on top of each of these rosettes. Start out with the plain tip and just build it up, and then just sort of drag it down until it thins out a little bit. So. There we go. And then I'll come back and finish with just a little leaf on the end here to give it color or contrast there. You could use a plain tip to do this. And then, so here is a quickly decorated carrot cake with a few cake crumbs and walnuts on the side, some rosettes, some carrots, and some leaves. You can also use these pastry bags to decorate cupcakes, cookies, and even brownies, if you like. It's a good way to express your creativity and your artistic abilities.